I view the question of whether or not there's a God to be an impenetrable mystery beyond human comprehension. The way Einstein put it, the problem is too vast for our limited minds, and I just feel that in view of that, the most reasonable, shall we say, responsible position to take on the issue of God is that of agnosticism. I love Gertrude Stein's articulation. She said, there ain't no answer, there ain't going to be any answer, there never has been an answer, that's the answer. Clarence Darrow, you know of him, of course, he said, I don't purport to know what ignorant men are sure of. When you were saying I'm doing something to your audience, is your audience fundamentalist Christian or what?
I think they're all kinds, and that's because we don't balkanize or separate people based on their personal beliefs. We're actually freedom activists here, as well as a radio host. So we encourage people to think for themselves, and I agree with you. There's your echo again, Vincent. But I agree with you that atheist is a form of dogma, and I like people to stay away from that. You've been filibustering a little bit, but that's okay. You're a lawyer, as you said.
You go ahead. You go ahead.
I can see how you never lost a case, man, because no one really gets in anything. We'll get to that. But one thing, about science, I guess, and you brought up Albert Einstein, is one thing I believe is that energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. And isn't that, in a way, an afterlife?
Well, acolyte is a word I've heard in the past, but my alleged mind at the moment cannot translate it. To tell me what acolyte means. I definitely have heard it and knew it one time.
Yeah, afterlife is what I said.
Afterlife. You see, I'm getting old. I didn't hear the word. Afterlife.
Or if our consciousness might move on, and nobody knows that because we haven't been dead yet. And I guess there's a form of hope involved in all of that, to coin a phrase from someone else we know. That if I'm just living here for the moment, then what does it matter what I do? If I don't have to pay in some kind of a universal sense, because as I mentioned, I'm a Buddhist, Vincent, and Vincent Bugliosi with us on the show today, and I do believe in a form of nirvana, but not in the dogmatic sense. What would that do to society? I mean, we've seen what organized religion does to society, and we were talking about the Bin Laden death earlier on the show. You might have heard that, and we see that some radical Christians are murdering devils in many ways. So we've seen what it does, but what would it do if it was just all gone? I'd like you to answer that question. If there was no religion, there was no dogma, and people just accepted that we're only here for 70 years, and that's it, that's it, the light goes out, there's nothing to account for, what would that do to the masses of humanity that maybe aren't as intellectual as you are?
I'm not denigrating faith, although faith by definition is a belief in the unknown, a belief in that for which there's no proof. I'm simply saying that faith basically is wishful thinking, and we should not think that faith is synonymous with the object of the faith. You're getting into the issue is
what motivation? But what motivation do we have to leave the world in a better place and to be good stewards of the earth?
And I'm not saying, I agree with you. I'm not saying that God does not serve a purpose. Obviously, I think God and religion have lit many candles of warmth throughout the centuries. It's softened pangs of fear about what's going to happen after we die. Tolstoy said it's the very force of life. I'm just bringing some logic to this. I'm not saying let's destroy God or religion. I'm an agnostic. I don't know. I'm just talking about logic and evidence. In answer to your question, I think we need God. I think we need God since the very dawn of history. People have been looking up to the heavens for help from some supernatural being in our daily life, and to assure us after we die, it's not going to be the end of it. So I'm not denigrating that. I'm simply looking at the evidence. Is there evidence, for instance, of life after death? If we go back to the original source, we find that there is no evidence. It's just naked speculation. Let me just do that for a moment. I looked at the Bible to see whether there was any evidence of life after death, and there's a reference to heaven and hell and all that stuff, but I could not find any evidence in the Bible for living on forevermore in heaven with God, if you go to heaven, or living on forevermore in hell with Satan. So I said to myself, where did Christianity get this? Did a little research. Turned out that they borrowed it from Judaism. But if it's not in the Bible, if it's not in the Bible, where did Judaism get it? Well, I couldn't find that out until I looked it up in the Encyclopedia Judaica, which said that the doctrine of the immortality of the soul probably came into Judaism from the Greeks. Now, that required a lot of research on my part. Socrates never put anything in writing, as far as we know. Certainly nothing that survived. He survives through Plato, his main student. Plato's got many, many dialogues. I finally found it in Phaedrus, Phaedrus, where he articulates the immortality of the soul. And it's based on 4 foundationalist presuppositions. Number 1, he presupposes there's a God. Number 2, he presupposes that the God is he presupposes that there's a soul. Number 3, he presupposes that the soul is immortal because he presupposes that the soul was never born. And like I say in my book, if we presuppose I had wings, maybe I could fly. So we have this naked speculation by Plato, which Judaism and eventually Christianity bought without question, and it's affected the lives of billions and billions of people throughout the years. What intelligent reason do we have for believing that there's life after death when it's based on naked speculation? Now, do we want life after death? Do I know if there's life after death? I think it's wonderful that people think that there is life after death.
Kind of the meaning of faith, isn't it?
Pardon? Yeah.
That is kind of the meaning of faith.
I have no problem with people believing in life after death because it tells them that there's some meaning to our life, that life is not just some accidental adventure. But I'm just analyzing this. Where did we get all this stuff? Is there any logic behind it? Am I saying that we shouldn't believe in life after death? It's wonderful that we do. That doesn't change someone like me, if we're going to follow the Socratic imperative that truth is all important, to talk about it. Where did we get it? Well, turns out it came from Plato. It came from Plato. And Judaism admits, came in from the Greeks. So I only follow the evidence. I'm not saying it's good or bad or whether I believe it or not. Everything is the evidence. That's my only master, Jack.
Let me butt in here. Vincent Bugliosi with us. His newest book is Divinity of Doubt. It's out now, and it's an interesting discussion, and he's had that discussion with us here for about the last 15 minutes. What I want to do when we come back is make some comparisons to, what I think that some of the more elite people of the world believe. For instance, a lot of the things that you're saying, I might hear from the Church of Satan. That is not to accuse you of being in league with them. And Anton LaVey, but I've talked to them, and they sound a lot like what you're saying right now, which is interesting. So I want to talk about that. Secular humanism, Luciferianism, and these other isms, and the fact that
I'm not an authority on any of that stuff.
Well, I mean, you met and prosecuted a servant of Satan, basically, in Charlie Manson, gives you a unique experience. He's actually come out and been talking about global warming. Apparently, he had a cell phone in his prison cell, which is amazing to me after everything that's been said and done. So what I'm hoping we can do is, we're going to go to break here in about a minute, is to kind of break all of that down and put that in context of where your book is. Because I think what my listeners do is they think for themselves, as I mentioned, and they also, want to look at who are the people that are putting out all the information and what kind of people are they before they digest and get through all of this. So for me to sell some books for you, we're going to have to go there a little bit. And I was told you can stay with us for the hour. So that should...
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
That should be great. I don't know if you remember, and Doug, you're going to take us to break here. Doug's doing the show for us right now and doing the board up. I don't know if you remember being on with me a few years ago, but we'll talk about that too. Unless, Doug, you're telling me we're skipping the breaks. Is that what's going on? No, there's the music. Right on cue. See how I do that, Vincent?
Yes, you're very good.
I'm just kidding. Stay with us. Vincent
you're a very good interviewer.
Deadline Live, Jack Flood.
You are listening to the Oracle Broadcasting Network, the home of cutting-edge talk radio.